All right, so we are streaming live right now, and I think we can just get started right now. So I guess I'll start with introducing myself and YHSA. Hi, everyone. My name is Jaspreet Gill. I am the chairperson and co-founder of the Youth Health Sciences Association, also known as YHSA. As an organization, we aim to, As an organization, we aim to empower youth who wish to pursue a career within the health sciences or healthcare. We would like to thank all our panelists and our attendees for taking out the time and joining us with this valuable learning experience. We're so excited. I am co-hosting this event with two of our other executives, Leo and Meher. Meher, do you want to maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. My name is Meher, and I'm a senior executive with the YHSA, and I'm going into my first year of the Master Health Sci.
Thank you. Leo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Leo, and I'm in grade 11. I'm the vice chairperson of YHSA.
All right, perfect. Leah, do you want to maybe share your screen? I think you're having a little bit of trouble with that. But...
Yes, so just give me 1 second. Google Meet's just kicked off my screen and I'm just getting it back up again.
All right, sounds good. All right, so Meher, do you want to continue? You are on mute, Meher.
Some exciting news that we have to share with you all is that we're starting a newsletter. And so starting in October, we'll be releasing a newsletter which will give you access to opportunities in your community, educate you on current issues in healthcare, and it'll include exclusive tips and tricks for professional health schools, interviews with healthcare professionals, and much more. Make sure to sign up on our website and as well as fill out the feedback form that we'll be sending out at the end of this webinar. And your responses will help us continue to improve our future events.
All right, perfect. So I think we can get started with introductions. I think Leo is having a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, Jaspreet, if you could share your screen, I just need to let people in. Google Meets is not cooperating right now. I apologize for this.
No worries.
So while Jaspreet sets up the slideshow, I'm just going to go over the rules for the webinar now that a decent amount of people have entered the meeting. So if all regular attendees could please turn off their mics as well as their cameras, we would really appreciate that. And we would just like to tell everyone that if they do cause any disturbance during the webinar, they will be removed immediately. This is a strict policy and we have a no tolerance policy here. So if everyone could adhere to those rules, and if anyone has any questions for our webinar panelists, they can include that into the chat and we will hopefully be able to respond to your question.
All right. So it's not letting me share my screen. Uh-oh, okay. Just give me a second to troubleshoot. I think we can just get started with introductions of our panelists.
So I'll just kind of direct that while we get this slideshow up and running. So sorry about this. So let's start with Leah. Could you please tell us a bit about yourself, where you're going, and what your specialty is? Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to first say thank you to YHSA for having me. I'm really excited to share as much information as I can with you guys. So I'm originally from Barbados. I left there when I was 16 to move to the US. And I did my undergrad at Syracuse University. I majored in chemistry. And whilst I was there, one thing that I thought I really wanted to involve in my curriculum was something for like a balance of life. So I danced because I've always danced growing up. So I did that, and then I also minored in Spanish. So I picked that up because I wanted to be able to study abroad as well. So that's why I studied abroad in Madrid. And I did my master's as well because I took a few years off before I went right into dental school. And I'm a first year now at Tufts.
All right, amazing. Can you get Manvir to introduce himself?
Currently at Western University, going into my third year and interdisciplinary sciences. There's some members in for the teams. Currently studying for the MCAT. So I'm not as ahead in the game as some of the other panelists here, and I hope whatever experience I do have, I hope I can help you guys with it.
All right, so then we'll move on to Nicole.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole. I just wanted to take a minute to again thank this wonderful organization for bringing us all together, as I think this is a really important thing to put forth. So I will be entering my first year of pharmacy school at UofT. Before I finished my Bachelor of Science at the University of Waterloo with a biology minor. I also wrote the PCAT to get into Toronto. I applied to both Toronto and Waterloo. I'm a huge history buff, so that was kind of my way of diversifying my degree. I did a lot of different courses within the history department. And I also was really into Model United Nations. So yeah, I just like to thank everybody for being here. And yeah, thanks.
If we could then switch the slide, we'll have the next person, the next panelist introduce themselves. So if we could have Kabir introduce himself.
Hi everyone, my name is Kabir Walia. I'm currently a second year student at the Queen's University in the Queen's University Accelerated Route to Medical School program. I am a huge singer. I have been singing ever since I was 6 years old. I love singing at weddings. I've done the national anthem before Raptors games twice now. So that's one of the ways that I keep myself busy outside of school. This is my last year of undergrad through the QuARMS pathway, and next year I'll be going into medical school. Currently, I'm unsure of what medical specialty I want to pursue. However, it changes honestly on the daily. And again, thank you so much, YHSA, for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to answering all of your questions.
Thank you, Kabir. Then we'll move on to Alexa.
Hi guys, my name's Alexa. I'm super excited to be here tonight. It's so weird speaking and not seeing everyone's faces who I'm talking to, but I'm imagining there's a pretty large number out there. I'm currently in my fourth and final year of optometry school at University of Waterloo, but I'm currently completing one of my externships in Toronto. I am originally from Winnipeg, so I did actually complete my undergrad majoring in psychology at University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. And yeah, I'm looking forward to answering all your questions.
Thank you, Alexa. Then we'll move on to the prompts. So just to let everyone know, YHSA is holding this webinar in approximately 3 different sections. We'll be doing general prompts where we'll have multiple of the panelists answering the same question in a discussion-based conversation. And then we will be moving on to more directed prompts that are targeted towards specific panelists. And then at the end, if time permits, we'll have a short Q&A session from the chat. And if anyone has any questions at any point during the webinar, please just type it into the chat and we will hopefully be able to bring it up into the webinar, or one of our executive team members will be able to respond to your question directly in the chat. Thank you. So then, Jaspreet, if you want to continue with the questions. Okay. So currently there are technical difficulties on Jaspreet's side, so I will just proceed with the first question. I'm so sorry about this. So the first prompt is, what is your earliest memory in which you can recall your passion for health sciences or your chosen path? And as an extension, how have your personal experiences helped you to narrow down the field you wanted to pursue in health sciences? So right now I'll invite two panelists to respond to this question, but we have Leah and Alexa respond first.
Okay, I'll start off. So for me, honestly, I always wanted to be a dentist. Growing up in Barbados, like probably since I was 7 or 8, my mom even has like a photograph of me pretending to work on my stuffed animals and stuff. So having that in my head, like going along and going to school and everything and still sticking with it. When I started to shadow, I think the first time I was 16, I just like observed one day at my dentist and I started to get the hang of things and really like it. And when I moved to the US and during my undergrad, the summers, I started shadowing again. And I would say for me personally, it's the shadowing that really like solidified it for me, seeing how my dentist treated his patients and then also seeing the impact it had on them. That's what really solidified it for me. So yeah, those would be my personal experiences that confirmed it.
Awesome. So I'm actually going to talk more about kind of why I chose optometry over, let's say, med school or dentistry. I've always been a creative person. Growing up, like I've always loved fashion. I was a dancer. That's my form of expressing myself. And so I wanted to find a career that would challenge that side as well as was involved in the health sciences and helping others. And from such a young age, I can remember I loved going to my optometrist, and even when I didn't need glasses, can you still hear me? Okay, even when I didn't need glasses, I just like always wanted to try on glasses because I thought it was so cool. So I think this career will allow me to one day hopefully, and it has the business aspect along with the health sciences aspect. So that's why I think this career is kind of unique in a sense. So yeah, that's how I kind of narrowed down to optometry.
All right, thank you. Then we'll have the, are there any other panelists that would like to share something? If
later, I know like mine came at the end of high school because originally I went to Western thinking I was going to do a double degree in IV business and medical science because I wasn't sure, but to be a support worker for the neurological disorders, and that this is going to be my path because I just like working in that field. So I just want to let you guys know that whenever the experience comes, just take it because you never know when that life-changing experience is going to come.
Okay, thank you so much. Then we'll move on to the second prompt.
So our next question is, can you explain in simple terms the application process and what that is for professional schools that you have or are applying to? And what does the general process look like for your chosen career path? For this, I think we can direct it to Nicole first, and then anyone else would like to add on.
Thank you. So I'm going to be very specific with pharmacy here, but for pharmacy, basically you start with kind of the general run-of-the-mill application. It's very basic. It's kind of your personal information and stuff like that. That is for most schools, so it's kind of the same starting out. You can generally apply after your second year of university. That is usually when you can achieve the prerequisites. So for the schools, like, you don't have to worry about knowing their course codes. They usually have what's called like a conversion chart. So you can go to your school. So when I was applying from Waterloo, like, I could see their biology like meant like my 130 meant their 101 or whatever. So it's easier to convert that way, which was really nice. Basically, you then go on to like kind of the second stage. So for UofT in the past, they required you to write the PCAT. So what the PCAT is it's the Pharmacy College Admissions Test. It's basically a test that runs for 4 hours and encompasses just some prerequisite knowledge in the fields of biology, chemistry, math, critical reading, and writing. And you basically just complete timed sections, and then they give you a score based on how they evaluate it. And then basically some of the other schools will require you to do the PCAT, some don't. And then basically they send you a more detailed application. The more detailed application kind of gives you some open-ended questions like, why would you make a good pharmacist? You know, kind of like open-ended prompts. And then basically you write like kind of like a response to that. This is where I would say kind of this whole thing about a story comes out, because it's kind of making yourself seem unique compared to applicant A and applicant B. Like, you can say, oh, well, this is how, like, my personal take. And then what you do is you also offer them up a reference. So for pharmacy, your reference either has to be a nurse, a doctor, or a pharmacist. So they contact them, and then they give you a letter of reference. So after that, you usually do what is called a Casper test. So what a Casper test basically does is it's for character fitness. I believe that this is very standard for a lot of the medical professions, but it's definitely in pharmacy. Basically what they do is they give you some scenarios. And you basically have to make a decision based on the scenario. So it'll be all sorts of scenarios that come up with a lot of like personal issues or other issues that like you kind of have to make like a judgment call based on who you are as a person. And they're basically just testing out, you know, your decision making and your judgment and that sort of thing. And then finally, once you do that, you can go on to what they invite everybody to an interview. So I only really know Waterloo and UofT because those are the two I applied to. But for Waterloo, it was a pretty basic interview. It was a lot of just open-ended questions, and you were kind of responding. And then they had a few like skill testing questions. So it was a little bit of math. And then there was a little bit of a typing question, but obviously it was a little bit different due to like COVID-19. Instead of having it in person, they kind of had it online. For UofT, they have like a general interview, and then they have kind of more of the scenarios that are kind of like the Casper test. So they have like judgment call basically. And then after that, you kind of just wait around and let them decide if they're gonna like offer you admission or not. And they usually have like a little site where they notify you. But that's kind of it for pharmacy.
All right, thank you so much for the very in-depth response. I'm sure lots of people will appreciate that. If you want to learn more about the interviews and other processes, YHSA will be featuring some of those pieces of information in their upcoming newsletter as well, written to you from professionals who have gone through the same process as well. So moving on to the next prompt, prompt number 3, we'll have one panelist respond. The question is, the party line for healthcare aspirants is, I want to help others. However, there are a number of other careers where you help others. So what has made healthcare stand out to you? And as an extension, how does an applicant build and express their story? What are some ways to provide evidence of interest? So for this, can we hear from Kabir?
For sure. I guess that, well, I would say that when looking at this question, I think, as you guys said, a lot of professions, the idea and the notion of helping others can reappear. And what I think makes healthcare sort of extend from this is the fact that the help that you do is exponential. Not only are you able to directly help your patients and the people that you look after, but in doing so, you're also looking after the people that those people have touched in their lives. So whether they have children, their siblings, their parents. So by helping other people through healthcare, you can help them help others. And you can easily see by connecting the dots how it can have an exponential impact. So at least for me, that's one of the reasons why healthcare specifically stood out to me. Growing up, I would see my grandfather in and out of the hospital, battling heart disease. And at least for me, while the doctors, of course, were focusing on him, just the impact that they also had on my brother and I, keep making sure that we were okay, making sure that our grandfather would be there for us. I would say that left an early impact on me at a young age. And I would say in terms of building and expressing your story on an application, I would say it's a good way is to just explicitly state kind of a story or an experience in your past that has allowed you to kind of really connect and resonate with the notion of helping others through healthcare. Whether that is a sick loved one, discovering a passion early on, things like that. So pulling tangible aspects from your own story and explicitly stating them is a very effective way, I would say. That way those stories come straight from the heart. And in that sense, it will allow the applicant committee to get a genuine idea of who you are as a person. They'll be able to judge your character a lot better. So that would be my advice upon this question.
Thank you so much, Kabir, for the very in-depth response. I'll hand it over to Mihar to ask question 4.
So our next question is, what makes someone unique in the eyes of professional schools and programs? So is it better to express your personal story, or is it better to stay safe and communicate the ideal answers or what you think that the applicant committees would want to hear? How personal is too personal for an admissions committee, and where is the boundary between relatable and inappropriate? Should you mention common answers and build on those, or avoid them completely? So if any panelists would like to chime in, you can go ahead.
I personally think speaking from the heart and your actual experience is one way that can benefit you, because if you try to find yourself saying what you think they want to hear, that may not even really be the answer, and you also may not be able to expand on it and get to allow them to see who you are as a person. And you want to stand out on your application. Like everything else that you submit in regards to your scores or other things in your application can be similar to other students. So you want to be able to show who you are as a person. So I think definitely expressing your personal story is better than just sticking with a safe answer.
Thank you for that. So now we'll be moving on to the next question. Leah will take over for that one.
So
we'll be moving into more,
we'll be moving into more directed questions. Again, if you ever need to chime in, any panelists, please do so. Don't let us hold you back from expressing what you need to say. So this question, the first question is directed to Kabir. As a student enrolled at the only accelerated medical program in Canada, what are the pros and cons of the accelerated program? What made you stand out in terms of your application process?
So I would say in terms of the pros, starting with those, I would say that at least with QuARMS, because it's such a tight-knit community feeling, it's only 10 people, you obviously have a built-in support system. And for that reason, it's a lot less competitive and a lot more nurturing than some of the other pre-medical programs in Canada. I would say that is definitely one pro. Another pro is that having it being accelerated and more of a pathway, avoiding obstacles like things like the MCAT and other med school application factors, it does give you a lot more time during your undergraduate experience to focus on other things and other endeavors that would otherwise be omitted often in other journeys into medical school. For example, you can focus a lot more on other interests that might help you to build your character and might help you to build those humanitarian traits that are required to be a physician. Often those can be lost and it can just be the academic traits that are focused on. So that I would say is another pro. In addition to that, I would say that QuARMS specifically has a very unique curriculum structure. Again, we focus a lot more on the humanitarian aspect of medicine. So not just things like pathologies and the science behind being a doctor, but also what it means to just be a physician and how to be an advocate in your community, which I think is very important, especially as physicians, where we kind of stand at the crossways between a highly scientific profession, but also a highly personal profession. And for that reason, I think you really get a lot out of the QuARMS program. In terms of some cons, I would say the one obvious one is that, of course, if you are unsure of medicine as a career or health sciences as a career, I would say it might not be the best option for you, just because it's streamlined and it's, again, you'd be taking up a spot for someone else that's very limited in that sense, with it only being 10 people. So I would say that it can be quite a commitment if you are unsure about what you want to go into the future. So I would say that, not that it's restrictive in the sense of what you want to do, but it's really meant for students that know that they want to pursue a profession in medicine. And for that reason, it might not give the most leeway to experiment with things in your undergraduate career that you might otherwise do in another science degree. So obviously it kind of fast tracks that process as a whole. So there again is less time to experiment with things, and you again have to know what you want to do early on. Which to some students, everyone makes decisions at their own pace. Some decide what they want to do in high school, some towards the end of undergrad, some after their master's. So again, that I would say is one of the cons. And then in terms of what made me stand out in terms of my application, I would say that I think with QuARMS and a lot of other programs, they look at kind of the culmination of everything and not just one aspect of your application. So for that reason, I'd say for me, I think it was just the culmination of my academics and my extracurricular, and also the information that I put in my application, making sure that kind of what I touched upon previously, I was being personal. Humans, after all, we are emotional beings. We are constantly forming connections with one another. And for that reason, I think by making your applications personal, you're truly able to connect with people on that application committee. And for that reason, you'll be able to create a long-lasting impression on them. And for that reason, when they're looking at people to call for the next stage of the process, you'll be in their mind, and you're more likely to be successful in that application process by portraying a applicant that is genuine and that is truly yourself. And that would be my response to this question.
All right.
Thank you for that. So our next question is for Leah. Or no, oh yeah, it's for Alexa. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
So as a student enrolled at one of only 2 optometry schools in Canada, how competitive was the application process and what made you stand out?
So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was easy to get into the school I'm at right now. I think what also makes it harder is the only other school is in Quebec, or University de Montreal, sorry. And you have to speak French, which I do not. So that limited me to one Canadian school. There are 22 or 23 schools in the States. I did end up applying to the States kind of as something I could back up on, but I ended up getting into Waterloo, which was very exciting. I would say the one upside of having only one English-speaking school in Canada is they're looking for a variety of applicants. So they're not limiting to what province you're from. So I'm from Manitoba. They definitely want a good representation of all the provinces. So I think that works in your benefit or benefits you. I would also say what made me stand out. I was a competitive dancer growing up. So I think showing that I balanced both dance and school helped make me stand out. I also had good volunteer experience, and I had a pretty good GPA. There's also an entrance exam called the OAT. So you normally take that either after your second or your third year in undergrad. And I also think people sometimes underlook how important your reference letters are. I know a lot of these programs have reference letters, and I think it's really important to get someone to write that for you that knows you. You want to ensure that you have some sort of personal relationship with this person, because they're basically having a large impact on you getting accepted into the school you want to go to. So I think that can be underlooked. So yeah, that's what I would say on that.
All right. I would also just like to tell everyone the level of competitiveness for Waterloo's program is they only accept 90 first-year entry students, and that's for all of English-speaking Canada. So that really is an impressive achievement. So then our next question is for Leah. How did your international volunteer experience help strengthen your passion for dentistry? And how did it benefit your application?
Okay, so to answer the first part of this question, so I did do a week trip in Peru, in Lima, Peru, and it was a medical missions trip. So I got the opportunity to help out with the doctor, the dentist, the pharmacy section, and triage and educating patients. And I would say that just being there, it really made me realize how much certain areas lack this healthcare aspect. And I was really personally just inspired by the families in Peru and how appreciative they were. And another aspect that I really liked was that we didn't only help them out with healthcare. So in some of their housing areas, they live on like really high hills and mountains. So it's kind of difficult for them to access it. So we did a project and we helped build a staircase for them. And just to see their gratitude and their gratefulness, it really inspired me and pushed me to, want to be able to be more involved in communities that don't have access to healthcare. And I would say that to the other part for how it benefited my application, in terms of community service, when you are speaking on your application and saying like, oh, I'm involved in community, I like community service, you don't want to just state it, but you want to show it. You want to showcase your interest in what you've done. So I feel like me saying that and then also showing all the community service that I've done and volunteering shows that I'm not just saying that I want to be a dentist and I want to help people, but I'm actually actively doing it.
And our next question is for Alexa. The same question. How did your international volunteer experience help strengthen your passion for optometry?
So I actually did my volunteer experience last summer while I was in school. It's part of our program. You can travel to a few different countries and actually volunteer and provide optometry related services to different people. So I went to the Ukraine in the mountains, and I actually provided eye care services to orphaned children who attend the camp. So it was a really, really unique experience. I actually lived at the camp with the children, and we set up shop in a cabin, and it was super creative and super unique. So I wouldn't say this obviously didn't benefit my application, but it definitely did strengthen my passion for optometry. Just seeing how many people are not given the opportunity to see an optometrist just made me appreciate what I do and what I will be doing. And, you know, we didn't only have the children that were coming to see us, we had the staff members who worked at the camp coming, and we provided them with glasses. And some of these people were in their 50s and have never seen clearly. So I think that was a pretty amazing experience and one I'll never forget.
All right, thank you so much for that response. So next we'll be moving on to Kabir. Do you think high school / pre-health students should stick to extracurriculars that are just relevant to the health sciences, or should they also branch out?
I would say that I think it's important to have a sense of balance. For me, at least, I had some health science related extracurriculars, like my involvement in HOSA and SHAD, but at the same time, I was heavily involved with my music, in the music department at my school, in addition to musical theater, drama, things like that. So I would say that obviously have some, but at the same time, it's also important to do other things that you're interested in. And again, by pursuing your other passions, it helps to build character. And I think regardless of what your passions are, you can always find ways to tie them into medicine. So for me, I found ways that I could tie, at least for me, from my perspective, I was able to find a lot of parallels between singing and my future career as a physician. So I think make your extracurricular profile personal and personalized, kind of custom to your interests. And I think, again, to reiterate what I said before, balance is critical.
Thank you. Our next question is for Nicole. Does having interests outside of science benefit you significantly during the application process, or if not during the application process, how have these diverse interests helped you in developing the skills you need for pharmacy or professional school?
Yeah, 100%. I think that having outside interests is so important, just because I think, as Kabir said, you could even have things that may not really relate to exactly what you're doing, but it can also strengthen your want to be a medical professional. I've found with, I've done a lot of things within history and within, Model UN as well. I think it's really important during the application process. It kind of heightened my passion for pharmacy, just because I was able to see even throughout history, how many important things we've learned, and how that knowledge is so powerful that we can see that, maybe a small event in someone's eyes could actually have catastrophic change and catastrophic consequences and things for the world. So I think it's really important within the application process to diversify your interests and what's going on, just because if you focus only on science and things like that, it is very easy to kind of come away with the kind of stereotypical answers, where having interests outside of the healthcare stream can really develop your story, as you can kind of see having an interest in all sorts of stuff can really help build that story and make you stand out, because you could see, maybe as you go through, you could say to yourself, if I'm a really big sports fanatic, I could see myself being a part of, a physician's team within a sports team, or doing, sports medicine, that sort of thing. So it can kind of help, with the application process, it can kind of help narrow your mind into your passions and things like that.
All right, thank you so much. The next question is for Manvir. So as a pre-med student, the coronavirus pandemic is probably not the best thing to have happen. So amid this crisis, how difficult has it become when searching for activities that can help you stand out with your application? How are you going about tackling this issue?
Become a lot harder. I've been looking for research opportunities around the campus with professors, with masters right now. Always a way to work around it. So I have a couple avenues that I'm looking at right now. First, directly related to COVID. So that's one. The other is before I was looking anywhere, and close to the opportunity.
All right, it seems as if we're having some technical difficulties here. Just give us 1 second.
So I think we'll move on to the next question and come back. So our next question is for Kabir. Do grades matter just as much as extracurriculars, or does one outweigh the other? What can one start doing in high school or in your first year of undergrad that can benefit them later?
So I would say that at least with QuARMS, grades, they're part of the picture, but they aren't the whole picture, if that makes sense. So I would say that I think in previous years, QuARMS is at a cutoff of 90% and above. I think as long as you're meeting that threshold, you're able to have a competitive applicant. Obviously, the higher, the better, but at the same time, it's also important to free up your schedule so that you can expand into things like your extracurriculars and things like that. I would say in terms of tips that you could do in high school and first year that could benefit you later, at least in medical school, for example, would be things like creating a study style or investigating what your study style is. It can change for a lot of people. Some people like to take notes. Some people use flashcards. Find what works for you. At least for me, in my grade 12 year, I mentally tried to train myself as if to imagine as if that was my first year of university, so that going into first year university, I kind of already knew what I wanted to do with my studying habits and things like that. I would say some of the other things which seem pretty simple but often go ignored can also help. So making sure that you have a steady and consistent sleep schedule is so important and often very underrated. Ensuring that you're meeting that minimum of 8 hours of sleep per day is extremely important, especially when you want to be functioning at such a high caliber. So I would say things like that. And again, going into high school and then potentially into university, obviously keeping your exercise up to speed in addition to your health and specifically your mental health as well. Those are all things that you can do to help prepare yourself for medical school so that your grades can be as great as they can be.
All right, thank you for that. Let's try Manvir again. So the question before was about finding opportunities and among the pandemic. So has it been more difficult? Also, if you could also if you have anything to say about the previous question, we will return to that screen once you are done.
About the research. So I know I couldn't find anything in my specific field. So I decided to look out and basically take anything that I could. I'm currently in the talks with someone that's in a geology field. So totally out of at this point, I was just ready to take anything and just build my resume. And then from next year, when hopefully times get better, I'd be able to use this experience to get more experiences. I guess it benefited me because now I can't volunteer at the hospital and stuff. I've been volunteering for 3 years, but take some people out because of COVID. But I guess time off to be able to work on my music. So now I'm kind of shifted and trying to differentiate myself and create my USP through music, and maybe hopefully it's harder. I guess you can take that and use that time wisely to benefit you in another way.
I'm just going to direct the flow of the conversation. So due to time restraints, we're going to just move on to the next question, if we can. So next we have is for Leah. We saw that you mentioned in your short biography that you studied abroad in Madrid. How did studying abroad benefit or hinder your application? And do you think that taking a gap year also benefited or hindered your application in any way?
Yeah, so I would say that studying abroad definitely benefited my application. Like I was saying earlier, you don't want to just state, oh, I can do this or I do that. You actually want to show it. So I'd say that it helped me to be able to adapt to different environments, learn other cultures, and on top of that, with me minoring in Spanish, it allowed me to be able to communicate with other patients when I shadowed, because not everyone speaks English, and it really benefits you on your application when you say that you can communicate with another patient. Dentistry is already something that most patients are afraid of, so you want to be able to relate to them, and that aspect really helps out. And in terms of taking a gap year, so I took a gap year because the first time I applied, I did want to go into dental school right away, but I didn't get in. And I would say what you do in your gap year is what can benefit or hinder you. So as a reapplicant, the committee really looks to see what you've done to improve. And that's why I did a master's program. So doing a master's program, I was able to take a lot of the courses that you would take your first year in dental school. So that definitely made me a much more competitive applicant, along with the additional experiences like I did going to Peru, and then also other academic enrichment events that I attended, like networking events. So those are other aspects that definitely enriched my application and benefited me in the long way.
Thank you. Our next question is for Nicole. So how did your 5-year retail pharmacy experience strengthen your passion for pursuing pharmacy?
Yeah, so it was very pivotal, I think, for sure. So I actually started in grade 12 with a co-op program. So that's something that if anybody is looking what they can do, especially for pharmacy within their years of high school, I would definitely recommend, if you have a co-op program at your school, to do that. I think it's so important. Just because not only to say like, yeah, this is what I want to do, but to actually see it happening in front of you is so key. Just because like you're not only saying to yourself, okay, I know on paper what a pharmacist does, like you can actually say to yourself, no, I've worked with a pharmacist, I know what's going on. And I think within my 5 years of experience, like I'm able to say to myself, okay, when I do become a pharmacist, this is how I will treat my staff, because I know I've been there, you know, and this is how, you know, I start to work up counseling skills and other skills that are really important, you know, getting to know your patients, not just saying this is patient A and this is patient B, but this is, you know, this person's name and they have 2 kids at home, and you really start to build those personal relationships with your patients that I think is so important. So yeah, it really strengthened my application because I thought that it really, like, I had experience to back up on. So it was kind of like building chapters within my story. I had chapters to not only say, okay, this is an experience, but to actually say, okay, I was, you know, this one day at the pharmacy, this happened, and this is what I learned from it. And so something else that within my experience, I had experience within the methadone program. So basically the methadone program is for people who struggle with addictions within opioids, which basically you help them overcome sort of their addictions and things like that. So it was really influential in me really like seeing not only the rosy side of pharmacy, but seeing, you know, issues and things like that. And I think that was something I was able to communicate within my application. And it was something that I find is really important, not only to see the rosy side of what you're going to you're going to be going into, but also see the reality and kind of, you know, the flip side of what's going on and stuff like that. So I think that was really important, going through, you know, that experience.
All right, so thank you. So the next question is for Manvir. From this point on, we're asking all panelists to just respond a bit quicker as time is running out. So Manvir, what are the biggest mistakes people make in the pre-medical process? What do you wish you knew or had done differently up till this point? And how do you cope with the stress that comes with the application process? This includes, for example, the MCAT, extracurriculars, GPA, personal statements, reference letters, etc.
First question to follow up. I did as well. What I was totally scared about my marks and everything, because everyone had said that you're obviously going to drop like 10-20% from what you had in high school. So that scared me, and because of that, I was not willing to take on any other extracurriculars, which is a huge mistake, because you want to try to get involved as early as possible in a and you can branch off of that in your further years. Just follow your passion. So I mean, for me, it's music. But on the side, like whenever I get time, whenever I feel overly stressed, is when I go down to my basement and I start playing all my instruments and all that, I sing as loud as I can. So I think with stress, it's however you cope best with it. For me, it's music. For somebody else, it might be visual arts. It can be anything. So just time off when you're in that stressed mode.
So for this next question, it's directed towards Alexa and Leah. What experience would you say people think are critical to a competitive application that you find are ineffective at best?
So I think people get really caught up in having, I'll touch on a few things, but I'll make it quick. One, I think people get caught up in having, you know, the best volunteer experience, the best research position. My advice is find something you're passionate about. If you are applying to med school, you don't necessarily need to have a bio research position. If you're passionate about psychology, find a research position there. Or maybe you don't need a research position, you know, but you have really strong volunteer experience or other experiences elsewhere. So I think it's better to find something that you're passionate about and commit to that thing than to find something that might look better on your application. I also think that it's better to focus on one or two extracurriculars than to flood yourself with 10 different things, because that's also going to show through when, you know, you only could attend a few things for a certain position versus being, you know, head on for you to plan something. So yeah, that's my advice.
So just to add on to what Alexa was saying, I think that sometimes in terms of community service, people think that they need to do this, this, and that, and like 10 different community service events, but you really want to hone into maybe a few, because in the long run, it can show your commitment, it can show your dedication to one specific organization or two or three, but having like a long list can kind of seem a bit like there's pros and cons to it. So I would definitely say to show your commitment. And then another thing would be like perfect scores. Like I get sometimes you feel like, oh, you don't have you're not in the 99 percentile range or whatever the case is, but it's not just about your scores. And for me personally, I didn't apply to Tufts the first time when I applied for dental school because I was like, oh, I can't get in not with these scores. But it's not just about your scores. So really make yourself as well-rounded as an applicant, and that can definitely benefit you.
All right, thank you so much for the insight. The next question is for Manvir. How have you begun to reflect on your own path into medicine and answering the great why question?
going through the process is either making you further from your goal and your passion or taking you closer to it. I have a lot of friends that decided that medicine wasn't for them. So I think the more courses that you take related to the field, the more you realize either you want to do it or you don't want to do it. For me, the more courses I've done has made me think that, oh, like I really like this, and this is meant for me. Me was like, yes, this is what I want to do because I love learning it, and just the I did physiology. Um, why question as well. Genuinely am interested in it, and just because when I'm able to use that information that I've learned in class, and when family members ask me about a problem that they're experiencing maybe, and I'm able to answer just from the knowledge that I've learned through class, for me that's the big, the why factor. Like, why am I doing this? Because I can help people with the knowledge that I'm gaining.
Thank you for that. And so our next question is, how do you recommend younger students to develop their answers for the why question? I think we can start off with Kabir.
Sure. I think that honestly, it depends on the person. But I would, in terms of when you're about to go and write your applications and you're trying to answer this why question, or whether it be on an application or an interview, anything like that, I feel like the most important thing to do is reflect on all of your previous experiences and kind of see which moments and which times during, whether it's your childhood or your experience through high school or undergrad, that really turned you towards the healthcare profession. And I would say in doing so, also find parts in your story, whether that be through extracurriculars or other experiences that you've had that you can use to tie into that story as well. So I think whenever you're building your application, you want to make it as personal as possible, really. And I think that will really help you craft a creative and a unique answer to the why question.
Nicole, you can go next.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of where the whole point of this meeting kind of comes to light, is I really believe that the why is where this story is told. I think that it is really good to say why and question these things, because it's enough to say, oh, I want to be a pharmacist, or, I want to be a dentist, or I want to be a doctor. But if you don't ask yourself the why question, you're not you're kind of just saying, okay, I like the job and that's kind of it. But if you say why and you're really like, okay, I've had this experience that has really shaped it, I think that makes it even more powerful, because they're not just looking for you to say, here's exactly what you want me to say. They're looking for, here's why I want to do this. Here's why, my life has led to this point, and that sort of thing. So they're making they're asking the why for a reason. They're asking the why so you are even questioning yourself and saying, okay, this is really what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I think it's really important to question your motivation behind going into this field, because it is such a long and grueling process to get there, and you really need to figure out why you're doing it, and so you can do it to the best of your ability. And Alexa?
I'm on mute. I was on mute, sorry. I also just want to say, I'm in my 4th year, and there are still times when I question my own why. So, don't think we all have it figured out, because you can be accepted into a program and still, just question, why are you here? And I know this is going to be touched on later in the conversation. What I have been doing, and kind of what I could recommend for you to do to kind of question yourself and find your why, is get a piece of paper or get a journal and write down prompts for yourself. So kind of, where do I see myself in 5 years? What makes you happy? What do you want to achieve? And go ahead and write your answers to those questions. And maybe you can't come up with an answer, but you can come back to that the next day. So yeah, I think it's something that we all struggle with, and hopefully finding your why is something you find in your life.
So just to quickly close that off, I would say that shadowing, whichever specialty it is you think you have an interest in, or maybe more than one, can really help you with your answer, because you can see how you feel after doing it or what the impact is on you, and that can maybe start to develop why I like to do this, or like if you like to work with your hands or anything of that sort, that can really help you develop your why.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sure everyone will appreciate those responses. And so we have reached 8 o'clock, and YHSA does understand if any of the panelists need to go at this time, but if you are available to stay, we would greatly appreciate that. So then to finally wrap up, have you ever encountered or experienced imposter syndrome? If so, how have you overcome it? And what advice would you give to others in tackling this common challenge? These questions are directed to all the panelists.
So I actually had like a session on this at the beginning of my first year here at Tufts, and what my takeaway from what they were telling us is that, so first you kind of want to bring up the times when is it that you start to feel like an imposter. So for example, for me, it could be like, oh, getting my acceptance into dental school, like did I get it because of my connections and my networking? And to kind of overcome that, you kind of have to first change your thoughts. So instead of downplaying yourself and being like, oh, I only got it because of my networking, think about what you've done to get there. And then that also helps you change your behavior. So you should tell people as well, like, you know, I'm doing this. You don't have to obviously broadcast it to everyone because sometimes it's personal. So share it with someone, like somebody that would be in your corner. And so by changing your thoughts and changing your behavior, overall, it helps you change your feelings. So when you do find out, oh, I got accepted, it helps you feel proud and know that all the things that you've done to lead up to this situation, you deserve it. And it's not just, oh, you're networking or your small connections. It's all the hard work that you put in that is the reason why you are where you are.
Thank you. And so our next question, based on the recent movement for equality of all races and as well as sexes, and the elimination of systemic racism that has erupted across the globe, it's now more appropriate than ever to address racism within the admissions process. Have any of you faced racism or sexism in your admissions process or program, and how have you dealt with it? How do you think future applicants or students should tackle such an issue and perhaps even find a solution?
Well, I obviously think that this is a critical issue that needs to be tackled, not only in the application process, but definitely in the healthcare world in its entirety. I definitely do think that this is a big issue that is happening, and it's really important that it has come to light, and I think that that's really important. I'm very fortunate that I haven't experienced this, just coming from a place that I haven't experienced it, but I do know quite a few of my close friends and other people that I do know that have unfortunately have experienced this, and it's really hard to see them go through that. But I do think that it's really appropriate way would be to examine this on the CASPER. I think that it's a way that's that really can test that sort of judgment and open that conversation in a way that is also really bringing these issues to light. But I think that there's something that I think it's a way that people can tackle not only the way we conduct ourselves while we're at school, but also just opening ourselves up to an open and honest conversation where we are just even if we are not experiencing it ourselves, we are open and we are here to listen to people that are, and here to be empathetic and here to be, open and honest and willing to learn and willing to do better.
I would actually like to direct this question to Kabir, since I know that Queen's University is not the most diverse. So maybe he can comment on that if that's okay.
For sure. I've talked about this a few times in other interviews, but I think specifically with Queens, it often isn't the most diverse place. And as a person of color, it can often feel a little bit alienating. But I would say it's really important to find your support system, a group of friends that you can relate to, people that will kind of be in your corner so that if you ever encounter experiences of adversity, you can hold those people accountable with the support that you need. And I think a lot of other universities obviously have navigated this process a lot better. Queen's still has a lot of work to do, as with most universities across Canada. But I would say, again, finding your support system and holding people accountable where they need to be held accountable is super important. And also, at the same time, not letting that get to you as hard as it can get to you. I know for me, it can often make things like imposter syndrome worse. Just being like, oh, especially when people make remarks or microaggressions, it can often kind of make you question your own character. And for that reason, I think it's important to understand that any remarks, whether they're racist remarks or other remarks, they're coming from a place of prejudice and a place of hatred. And you shouldn't let those get to you. Don't let those invalidate your experiences. Just push through them. And again, find your support system, find people that you can relate to, and hold those who do create adverse experiences, hold them accountable so that those issues can be rectified.
All right.
Thank you so much for that. Oh, I was just going to have Manvir also answer the question, just because I know that Western is also not the most diverse as far as what I've heard about it. So maybe he can answer it.
Going into Western, I felt it firsthand where but I think the way I went about it was like severely if I saw it, then I would just avoid it. But other than that, I would try to make the first approach just so that people realize that take the approach myself. And I think that's important because some people just don't know and just haven't had those experiences with people outside of their race. That you give them about yourself, about your culture. And I think the better it is for you and them. So I think it's like a give and take type of.
All right, thank you so much. So now I think we can have our panelists make some final remarks, a closing statement, I guess, if we can get it from all our panelists. That would be great. Let's start off with Alexa.
Yeah, so I just want to again thank YHSA for allowing me to come and talk to you guys. I was just looking in the chat to see there was a question on Casper. You actually do have to take Casper to for optometry for Waterloo. I know I was the first year to implement it. What I can give for advice on how to, I didn't actually do a course. It was pretty new and I just didn't want to spend the money on taking a course. So what I did is I practiced with a friend who was going into dentistry, and we practiced like we were both doing an interview, and she asked me questions, I asked her questions. I also think like I had a list of my personal experiences and kind of like complicated situations I've been in, or like I was a camp counselor and how I dealt with dealing with a cabin. Like I just had scenarios written out in front of me so that if a question came up, I could like quickly look down and think of, oh, I should use this as my example kind of thing and reference that. So yeah, I hope that helps with that question. Yeah, I'll let the other panelists say closing remarks, but thank you so much for everyone who tuned in.
I guess I'll go next. In terms of my final piece of advice, I would say often this piece of advice goes very underrated. But when I say don't be afraid to be yourself, I mean it with all my heart. Pursue your passions, do what genuinely makes you happy, and that will allow you to stand out in any application process. If there were any questions that I wasn't able to get to during this session, please feel free to contact me either on LinkedIn or Instagram at Kabir S. Walia. And once again, a big thank you to YHSA for having me. I always look forward to webinars like this.
Just to add on to what Kabir said, I agree with that 100%. You really want to be true to yourself, because if you aren't true to yourself, then you're going to find yourself making up situations and telling lies, and you don't want to have that in your application. So be true to yourself, and if there's any other questions that you guys have dental related that I could help you with, you can contact me. And I want to say thank you again to YHSA for this webinar. It was really great.
I'd just like to interject before any other panelists make their closing remarks. Just a note for everyone out there who are aspiring to become involved in the healthcare field. This is especially important to mention in this webinar, as in terms of lying and making things up for applications. Please just note that institutions such as medical schools, pharmacy schools, there are concrete punishments for lying and making things up, including termination of your program. So make sure you stay truthful to who you are. So thank you.
For holding this webinar, and thank you to everyone that came out. I think just the fact that you guys took the time out of your day to come about what you guys are about to do, and yeah, I hope you have a question towards me. Manvir Duhra, thank you.
So I'd just like to say a big thank you to everybody coming out. It's a lot to take. I know it's only an hour, but it is a lot to take time out of your day to come and listen to us. So I want to thank everybody for doing that. And I also want to thank this great organization for hosting this. And as a lot of people have said, be true to yourself. And a little other bit of advice from me is try. Just try as many different experiences, as many different outlets, as many different extracurriculars as you possibly can. Just give it a try. You may find the biggest passion of your life, or you may find the next thing you're going to say you hate. But if you give everything an honest try, nobody can follow you. And I think that that's something that's always a really important tool to have in your belt. And yet again, if anybody has any questions about pharmacy, the pharmacy process, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I did put my little @ in the chat, but it is Colywall XO. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So thank you.
If anyone has any other panelists has any other things to say, that would be the time. So if not, we would like to thank everyone for joining us here. Big thank you to all the panelists who took the time out of their day to make this slightly over 1 hour long webinar. We appreciate the dedication, we appreciate the cooperation and all the advice you've given to the aspiring health professionals here today. I'm sure Jaspreet would like to say something before we end the webinar.
Yes, thank you everyone, to our panelists and our attendees for coming out today. We really appreciate it. In order for us to help improve our events, we would like everyone to fill out a feedback form that we will be sending in our thank you email. I guess you can call it that. But other than that, thank you so much. And we look forward to the next one. Thank you to our panelists and our attendees once again.
Also, and just sorry for final closing remarks, YHSA is always open to anyone who has any suggestions for webinars. We are always looking at how to improve. If any panelists would like to return, we would love to have you here. I'm sure hopefully we can reach out to you if you are available, and to the general audience. Stay tuned. We have a lot going on These webinars are really informative. We've seen that in the feedback, and we really appreciate everything once again.
Thank you so much, everybody. Until the next one, I guess.